Hi everyone, I'm Jem. Welcome to my creative space. Alright, it's the 11th day of Ceri Griffith's July postcard play challenge, and today rather than starting with a postcard background, I'm starting with some ephemera. I'm also going to try and talk and work at the same time. I'm not sure how that's going to go, but we'll give it a try. Okay, so these are some poppies, and these were in my stash of stuff, and I actually made these recently as part of a table decoration for Anzac Day. Now here in New Zealand we celebrate Anzac Day on the 25th of April, and it's a day which, broadly speaking, it's a bit like Remembrance Sunday in the UK, where we sort of acknowledge all Australian and New Zealand forces personnel. But more specifically, Anzac Day commemorates the landing at Gallipoli, where the Australian and New Zealand troops landed in 1915, and it was a horrific battle. And in terms of New Zealand soldiers, something like 2,000, just over 2,700 New Zealand soldiers lost their life in that battle. So we have a public holiday on the 25th of April, and that day remembers the Anzac soldiers. So, because I don't throw anything out, I still have all these poppies, and I thought, let's use them. And I found this background. So my aim today is to use some of these and create a card acknowledging, remembering Anzac Day. So, where to go? I've also got, I've got these which I found in my stash as well. And I like things in threes, of course. So I'm wondering if I can do something with those. I think 3 poppies would be a little bit big on the card. So I'm thinking about 1 poppy and 3 crosses. I quite like that one. Maybe something like this. So while I play around with this, I'll tell you a little bit more. There's if you live in New Zealand or you're visiting, we have a fantastic museum in Wellington called Te Papa. And in Te Papa we have a big exhibition called Gallipoli. There's a little bit more to it than that, but anyway, it's called Gallipoli. Sorry, I'm thinking and told you I didn't know whether that would work. Anyway, if you're in New Zealand or you live here, I would really encourage you to go and have a look at this exhibition, because it doesn't glorify war. It talks about the horrors of Gallipoli, and it does that through the story of, I think it's 8 soldiers who fought at Gallipoli. And the interesting thing for me is that one of those soldiers is my husband's great uncle. But anyway, it's a really fascinating exhibition. As I say, it doesn't glorify war. It really tells the horrors of this battle that took place at Gallipoli. And it's really well done. It's interactive, and a lot of the star of the exhibition are these 8 soldiers, and they've been recreated. Models of these soldiers have been recreated, but these models are I think 2.5 times life size. So they're amazing. They're incredibly detailed. They're done by Weta Workshops, who I believe did quite a lot of work on like Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit films. But again, they're workshop based in Wellington. But these figures are absolutely amazing, really detailed. There's lots of interactive bits to the exhibition, and as I say, I'm quite a pacifist, and this exhibition doesn't glorify war at all. It really talks about how horrific it was. And I'm just looking at this because I'm wondering if that's been cut from something slightly different, because it's got a little bit of white around the edge. Those sort of things really irritate me, so I'm just going to ink around it. Anyway, yeah, so my husband's great uncle, he was called Jack Dunn, and his really interesting story. He was in his late 20s when he signed up, and got sent to the front during the war. And it got shipped out to Gallipoli, and became really sick. Off the top of my head, I think he had pneumonia. Anyway, he was in the field hospital for a while, and went back to the front before he was really better. And a few days later, he was caught asleep on duty, which obviously a big no-no. He was on sentry duty and got caught asleep, and he was court-martialed and sentenced to death. And I think he's the only New Zealand soldier during the Gallipoli campaign that that was sentenced to death. Anyway, a few days later, his sentence was commuted or remitted rather, and he was sent back to the front line, and within a few days he died anyway, which you know, terribly sad really, but that was sort of the reality of war. So there you go, just a little bit of background there. Alright, I've stuck those down. Debating. I think this is cardboard. I think that's going to be too. Oh, look, if you've watched me for the last couple of weeks, you'll know that I like a bit of dimension. I'm going to just seal this because I can see some little shiny bits on it where it was glued together originally, and I know that's going to bug me, so I'm just going to put a bit of some background I've chosen. This is a gel print. I have a really big script stencil, and I obviously wasn't concentrating the day I did this because I forgot to reverse the stencil on the gel plate. So of course when I pulled it the writing was all back to front, but I thought actually it was another one of those things that when you cut it up it looked okay. So I prepared this one earlier. This is rice paper. I've got a real thing for this at the moment. I've been using it a lot, and I've stamped a little quote, lest we forget, and also the number 11 here. Now I thought also kind of relevant to make this card on the 11th, given that the 11th is significant as Armistice Day. So the armistice which ended World War I was signed on the 11th hour of the 11th day at the 11th month. Was that when it was signed, when it came into effect? I think that's when it came into effect. Anyway, it effectively ended the war. So and I know in England Remembrance Sunday is usually around, it's the closest Sunday to the 11th of November, I think. I'm sure someone will tell me if I haven't got that right. I grew up in England, but I've lived in New Zealand for something like 20 years now, so after a while old memory goes a bit. It's one of those, that probably explains the odd accent that you hear. It's one of those things when I go back to visit family in England, people think that I'm Australian, and yet here in New Zealand, a lot of people still pick my English accent. So I have dual citizenship, but I'm not sure whether I quite fit in anywhere at the moment. But I love New Zealand, I have to say. Okay, how does that look? What do we think? That might well work. And I'm going to use a bit of, yeah, that's probably sticky enough underneath for me just to do this. Now, rice paper doesn't disappear into the background quite as much as tissue paper, but it does sort of go semi-transparent. I don't actually have any white tissue paper at the moment, and one of my challenges to myself was to get through these 31 days without buying any new supplies to use. I'm sure, like a lot of you, I have lots of stuff, and sorry about the rattling. This was a good opportunity to use some of my stash up. And I think I'm just going to try and, there we go, lift that paper away from the top of those crosses. These crosses remind me of, as a teenager, we did a school trip. As I say, I grew up in England, and as a teenager we did a school trip to France, and one of my abiding memories is walking through just the fields and fields of crosses from the graves and all the soldiers. I think that's something that will always stay with me. All right. So we've got a number 11. Anzac Day in New Zealand is celebrated with a dawn service. So a lot of people get up incredibly early, and it's often dark. I've been to a couple in a local area, and they're always very moving. Services, usually outdoors. And it's as the sun rises normally. Yeah, I think we'll pop that one down there. Alrighty, I'm going to take a moment to dry that off before I do anything else. Okay, here we go. I struggled with that a little bit. I think I should have done that before I covered it in matte gel medium. My little art pens did not like that at all. You live and learn. Right. As you can see, this still isn't quite dry. It's got a little bit of matte gel medium around there still. But that's alright. I'm going to pop that on. And that's got that just a little bit of dimension to it. There we go. So we've got a number, a little bit of black around the edge, of course. I keep saying I'm not going to ink the card today. I'm not going to ink the edge of every card, but I do. Just love it. Somehow it just frames things up, brings things out. There's just a tiny little hanging over there. What's that? So there we are, day 11 done, and a tribute to Anzac Day and our troops today. So thank you for watching. Ka kite anō. If you like what you see, feel free to like and subscribe. Thank you folks, see you tomorrow.